food safety management systems. Introduction. To prevent food poisoning, hygiene standards must be strictly maintained by a food safety management system, FSMS, which controls risk from the beginning of food production to the end. It also ensures your business has safe practices. Supervisors are in the front line of enforcing this. Your FSMS must be based on HACCP principles, the international standard method for identifying, controlling and eliminating food hazards. In this module, we will examine FSMS and HACCP in detail. Topics to be covered. Topics to be covered in this module. What is a food safety management system, FSMS? Who needs an FSMS? What should an FSMS include? How often should the FSMS be reviewed? Who needs to see the FSMS? What is the hazard analysis and critical control point, HACCP? The advantages of HACCP. The 7 principles of HACCP. Prerequisite programs for HACCP. 12-step HACCP implementation. FSMS is based on HACCP principles. What is a food safety management system, FSMS? An FSMS has 4 perspectives. Who needs an FSMS? What should an FSMS include? How often should the FSMS be reviewed? Who needs to see the FSMS? Your FSMS is a written document containing all the information about your food safety procedures, including compliance procedures, itemization of potential hazards, the information needed to manage your business's processes. Food handling businesses must commit to an HACCP-based FSMS by law. You risk causing serious illness and prosecution if you don't. You might even have to close for good. To make sure you have a rigorous FSMS, follow the UK Food Standards Agency's FSA advice on catering business food hygiene, downloadable here. England and Wales, www.food.gov.uk. Scotland, www.foodstandards.gov.scot. Northern Ireland, www.food.gov.uk. Who needs an FSMS? The short answer is, all UK food businesses must have an HACCP-based FSMS. Supervisors must rigorously enforce these procedures. What should an FSMS include? An FSMS has 8 steps. 1. Policy statement. The nature of your business. Your legal obligations. Your commitment to the HACCP system. Ensure your food is fit for human consumption. 2. HACCP overview. Your detailed HACCP responsibilities. The names of people who will carry out the HACCP procedures. 3. HACCP, identifying critical control points, CCPS. Analyze your business and premises for hazards and CCPS. 4. EHO inspections. You must have a written record of your inspection procedures for the local authority. 5. Complaints procedure. You must have a written customer complaints procedure, including who deals with complaints, how to record complaints, investigation methods, what should happen afterwards. 6. The HACCP summary. Record all details of food safety and hygiene risks and hazards associated with them. Risk categories such as storage, refuse disposal, food chilling. Which CCP each comes under. Each risk's hazards. Types of corrective action, CA, taken. 7. Design and structure standards. Your premises design and structure must be safe, including facilities and equipment. 8. Record keeping. Include templates of all supporting documentation. How often should the FSMS be reviewed? Your FSMS should be reviewed annually and after important changes in your company. Ask yourself, is the HACCP still fit for purpose? Does documentation still cover all of the business? Will changes add new hazards? Do staff need retraining? Who needs to see the FSMS? Everyone who works in a food business. FSMS documents should be accessible to staff, local authority enforcement officers and supply chain companies. What is HACCP? HACCP is intended to prevent microbiological, chemical and physical hazards at every stage of food production by identifying and controlling problems before they occur. Everyone has a duty to safeguard it. The business owners have ultimate responsibility, and supervisors' role is significant. We will examine HACCP under the following headings. The advantages of HACCP. The 7 principles of HACCP. Prerequisite programs for HACCP. The advantages of HACCP. HACCP provides cost-effective food safety procedures from farm to plate due to its emphasis on preventive methods. The main advantages can be remembered using the mnemonic Safe Food, used by the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. Saves money. Avoids poisoning customers. Food safety standards increase. Ensures you're legally compliant. Food quality standards increase. Organizes your safe food production process. Organizes staff and efficiency. Due diligence defense. The 7 principles of HACCP. HACCP is based on 7 principles. Conducting risk analysis. Identifying critical control points, CCPs. Establishing critical limits, CLs. Installing monitoring procedures. Deciding on corrective actions, CAs. Verification. Documentation and review. Under these principles, loss of control can be detected and corrected. Hazardous food won't be consumed by customers. HACCP can be customized to suit your business. Conducting a risk analysis. Before risk analysis, hazards present must be identified, that is, anything that might cause harm. There are 3 types of hazard: biological, foodborne illness organisms; chemical, dangerous or unpalatable substances, such as pesticides and cleaning residues; physical, objects in food, such as hair, glass and metal. Risk analysis identifies where hazards might be introduced. Using HACCP identifies the food production stages that could create hazards. Such process steps include order and purchase, delivery, transportation, food premises storage, pre-cooking preparation, cooking, assembly, cooling, warming, display, service. Identifying CCPs. CCPs are where you prevent, remove or reduce a hazard in your work process. www.gov.uk. Use the 4-step CCP decision tree to ask questions about your process steps. Do preventive controls exist for the hazard? Are these enough to remove or reduce the risk? Could the hazard realistically happen? Can the risk be controlled at a later stage? Do preventive controls exist for the hazard? Your business might cause food poisoning by undercooking chicken. The simplest way to prevent this is to ensure it is cooked at a safe temperature for the correct length of time. If you are not doing this, we need to consider whether this step is a CCP. If the hazard could be controlled at a later stage, then it isn't. However, if you are cooking chicken, this step needs to be designed to contain any hazard. Are these enough to remove or reduce a specific risk? Correctly cooking chicken should eliminate foodborne illness risk, so this step is a CCP. If it isn't, ask the 3rd question. Could the hazard realistically happen? Could a foodborne pathogen increase to a hazardous level in food at this stage? For example, cooking hamburger meat rare, as opposed to medium or well done, can be a bad idea for elderly people or infants. This is a critical control point, and you should thoroughly cook the meat before serving it. If a risk is still likely, ask the 4th question. Can the risk be controlled at a later stage? Metal fragments might be introduced to hamburger mince from a meat grinder. This process must be redesigned. The supplier could use a metal detector on meat before it's shipped, for example. In the case of pathogens, contamination must be controlled at the earliest CCP, or you must redesign the process. Establishing CLs. The CLs are the values that must be met at CCPs to keep food safe. To select them, you should consider the following, using the mnemonic OMM. Observable, CLs and effects must be seen. Measurable, effects must be quantifiable. Monitorable in real time, this enables prompt corrections. CLs are threefold. Chemical, for example, pH, levels of mycotoxin, allergens and salt or sugar content. Physical, for example, dry weight, temperature, humidity, viscosity, time and length. Procedural, for example, sourcing chicken from a supplier that has particular controls in place to prevent contamination. CLs for each CCP can be numerous, but must be independently quantifiable. For example, CLs for controlling salmonella at the CCP of cooking chicken are 70 degrees Celsius at 2 minutes. Here, temperature and time are the critical limits to be achieved and measured. Food businesses need to consider the following to establish CLs. Methods and measurement units. Details of how the CL was identified. Is the CL enough to prevent, remove or reduce the hazard? Can the CL be quantified in real time during the production process, for example when boiling water? Target values. Achieving a temperature higher than 70 degrees Celsius is essential to kill salmonella. How to record the process used to identify the CL? Regularly scheduled reviews in the light of new information. Measuring bacterial growth is often not practical when identifying CLs in a food business because of the time involved. Monitoring. Monitoring involves scheduled sequences of measurements and observations to ensure you meet established CLs. CCPs must be monitored effectively as part of a scheduled program that allows time to take action. Your food safety operative or team decides the appropriate CCP monitoring methods specifically designed for that point. Methods should be able to give the earliest possible warning that a CL has been crossed. All data analysis methods used must give essential information at each CCP. You must specify the necessary tools or equipment to be used, as well as the training needed by FSMS staff. This information must be recorded in a monitoring plan, along with the methods of recording, reviewing and analyzing the data. The hazard should be controlled at exactly the same place where it's monitored. Continuous monitoring, for example sampling of raw and cooked ingredients, is best, but you should gather the necessary data to decide the frequency of monitoring. There are a lot of factors to consider when formulating your monitoring plan. The nature of monitoring, measurement or observation. The system to be used, is it offline, for example removing samples, or in line, taking measurements? Frequency of monitoring, with specified dates. Monitoring equipment must be tested to check calibration or repair. Responsibility for monitoring, named and trained persons for each task. Record keeping, signed off by a competent person. Corrective action. You must formulate a corrective action plan, CAP, which should be performed by a supervisor whenever monitoring shows CLs aren't being met at CCPs. There are two types of corrective action, CA, to consider. Preventive, stop loss of control at a CCP after monitoring reveals target values aren't being met but that CLs are not yet breached. For example, adjusting the production process at that point. Responsive, after the loss of control at a CCP has happened, you've observed that a CL hasn't been achieved. The appropriate CA to loss of control is: get the system back under control. Identify affected foods or ingredients. Investigate the causes of the loss of control. The supervisor will decide which CA is needed to bring the system back under control. When a CA is needed, consider the following. What is needed immediately? Should the system be stopped completely, the product isolated or rapid adjustments made to equipment? What can be done about any food affected? Should it be isolated and quarantined or thrown away? Should you investigate? Should production processes be changed? Has training been adequate for staff involved at the CCP? Verification procedures. Take a critical view of HACCP procedures. You will personally verify that checks you perform are consistent and reliable. Typical examples of verification procedure include scheduled food sampling and temperature measurement. Documentation and review. An HACCP-based FSMS must be well documented to demonstrate that the system works efficiently and how it works. It should include the following: work instructions and memos, written policies and procedures, training records, HACCP charts, monitoring records, invoices and receipts. You must review your FSMS and HACCP at regular intervals, particularly when there is a change, such as moving to new premises, redesigning a room, adding a new item of equipment, an EHO inspection, a customer complaint, introduction of new ingredients, a menu change. A review must happen at least annually. Prerequisite programs for HACCP. There are some prerequisite controls that apply to most food businesses and are relevant to hazards at any stage of the production process. What are your prerequisites? Consider the following. How will it ensure safe food production? Which CAS will be needed if it goes wrong? Who will be responsible for checking it? What documentation will be needed? Most companies set up prerequisite programs before products are sold or eaten. Examples include building and location of premises and equipment in line with sanitary design principles, suppliers with effective FSMS and HACCP systems in place, written specifications for ingredients and products used, control of cross-contamination by linear production from raw to cooked food, sanitation schedule, rigorous staff personal hygiene standards, an effective pest control program. 12-step HACCP implementation. The prerequisite programs are in place. Now implement your HACCP plan. This follows 12 logical steps. Assemble your team. Describe the products. Identify the intended use of the product and its customers. Construct a flow diagram to describe the HACCP process. Confirm the flow diagram on site. Conduct a risk analysis. Identify the CCPS. Establish monitoring procedures. Decide on CAS. Verify them. Documentation and review. Step 1. Assemble your team. A team should be chosen according to skills and experience, and might include a supervisor, as well as someone from every department with site-specific knowledge. Step 2. Describe the product. Provide descriptions of all ingredients, foods, production methods, distribution method and the food's condition when distributed. Step 3. Identify the intended use and consumers. Write a description of the expected use of the food. Step 4. Construct a flow diagram to describe the HACCP process. An outline of the whole of your HACCP should now be made, which includes supply chain steps as the food enters or leaves the control of your business. Step 5. Confirm the flow diagram on site. The HACCP team must verify or correct the accuracy of the flow diagram. Steps 6 to 12. We have already discussed the 7 principles of HACCP in the previous slides. Those 7 principles are the steps from 6 to 12. FSMSS based on HACCP principles. Your catering business must have an FSMS based firmly on HACCP principles by law. It is usually the supervisor's job to ensure this. This is the best way to ensure that any hazards are prevented or controlled during food production processing. It is your best chance of understanding what could go wrong in your work systems and preventing it. Summary. What have we learned? An 8-step FSMS is a written document that contains all the information about how your business manages its food safety. You are obliged to run your FSMS according to HACCP principles. The HACCP contains details of your business's compliance procedures and potential hazards. Your HACCP has 7 principles, which include identifying critical control points and critical limits. A HACCP can only be set up after prerequisites have been fulfilled. The 7 principles make up the last of 12 HACCP steps you need to work through.